Hello and welcome to a Glastonbury Romance. While Mr. Evans was thus occupied, Red Robinson, in the room above where the comrades were assembled to hear his speech, was thinking to himself that he must conceal one little fact about his grand message to them and the scheme he intended to lay before them. This was the fact that it was really none other than Persephone's spear who, through her husband's mouth, had first broached the idea of starting a municipal factory in Glastonbury. It needed the wit of a woman to think of such a simple thing. But Red Robinson, like many another masculine politician, was resolved to take all the credit to himself of this flash of feminine inspiration. It was not long before the Cockney's penetrating voice began to make itself again audible to the ears of Mr. Evans, lifted up to yet a shriller pitch as Red approached his main argument. As a propagandist, Mr. Robinson always aimed at a disciplined art that resembled that of a Catholic peasant priest carefully trained in a seminary. But it often happened that his art broke down. "We have several comrades," Mr. Evans heard him explain now, "who are on the Glastonbury Town Council. I appeal to those comrades. I beg these comrades to use every means at their disposal to familiarize their colleagues with the principle of municipal ownership. These factories depend on natural resources. The Wookey Hole one depends on the subterranean river Axe, which flows beneath the Mandips. The Glastonbury one depends on the waters of the River Brew. Does this man Crow, does this selfish, luxurious, rich man cause these rivers to flow, or create the rains and the springs that fill these rivers? We are all comrades here, and I may talk freely here. I have come to learn that this religious fanatic we are accustomed to hear called by the name of Bloody Johnny," here there was a terrific stamping of feet and loud hilarious laughter above Mr. Evans's head, "is intending to use this legacy of ill-gotten bourgeoisie money, on which all the comrades here have heard, to bring crowds of visitors to this valley, to this town. You know, comrades, how such bourgeoisie visitors dislike everything industrial. But their dislike is not shared by the man I refer to. Now, this is what I propose to you, comrades. I propose that someone among us should be delegated to approach this man Gerd, who is evidently prepared to throw his money away, and try to persuade him to lead the town council, of which he is now a member, funds large enough to buy out the Devil Crow. I propose that this delegate from the parties persuade Gerd to buy for himself the factories if he cannot induce the town to purchase them. Anything is better than leaving them in the hands of such a devilish enemy of the working man as we know this Crow to be. And they'll go for a song, I tell you, comrades. They'll go for a song, because a really big strike will throw this concern into bankruptcy." "Don't interrupt me, comrades from Wells. This is only half my plan. As you all know, this is the year for the election of our mayor. Gerd is a fool, but he is a well-meaning fool. He is sympathetic to our cause. He is almost one of us. He is furthermore the sort of man that could be persuaded into anything. I have myself the entree into his house. I needn't say any more at this moment, and if this quarterly meeting of the comrades of Wells and Glastonbury delegated me to approach him as their representative, I believe there would be a good chance of persuading him. We would have to make his name prominent. That's what all bourgeoisie philanthropists want, to be talked of, to be heard of. The comrades of the town council would then propose him for mayor, to succeed the prize ass, Wallop. Nothing would please him better than to propose for mayor. With Gerd as mayor and the party behind the mayor, we might municipalize the water, the gas, the electricity, and finally these factories. This, comrades, is simply common sense. Some comrades here may object that this is a wild goose scheme, that in proposing it to them I am departing from practical politics. Let such comrades bethink themselves a little. Here is this sum of money inherited by this incredible fool who wants to spend it on being talked about. Why should we not elect him mayor when the election came on? No party but our party would bother with such a cat's paw. But that's just what we must win in the end, because we despise no means. The Conservatives, of course, will oppose him, but the Liberals and Labour men will support us if we take a strong lead. That's the great thing, to take a strong, clear lead. Half the town council are sick to death of Wallop. He's been mayor of Glastonbury so long that everyone wants a change. The drinking men would all vote for Bloody Johnny just for the sport of it and to stir things up. All the nonconformists would vote for him. Crow hates the mere thought of this fellow. Crow will get angry and say wild things and make some howling blunder. And then the town council, with our party in the background, will have Glastonbury in there. It was clear to Mr. Evans, who had begun at last to grow seriously interested in this discourse when he realized how closely it concerned his relative Mr. Gourd, that the meeting had called the speaker to order and shouted him down. Some other voice was speaking now in cold, low, sarcastic tones. Evan caught the words personal ambition, fancy scheme, fairy tale poppycock, wasting the party's funds, Menshevik claptrap. He even managed he heard the name of Crummy, coupled with a very gross epithet. The quarterly meeting evidently regarded itself as free from eavesdroppers and was permitting its speakers untrammeled license. After a while, Red Robinson's voice was audible again. Evans had met him once at the Garrards and was sure he was not mistaken as to his identity. This time it was clear that the Cockney orator was trying to carry the way by an emotional appeal. "We shall never have such a chance again, comrades," he was saying. "Gerd is a fool, but Gerd has a good heart. By electing Gerd as mayor, we shall be electing ourselves into the power behind the throne. And what could we not achieve then? Away from with all these medieval superstitions. Away with all these pious pilgrimages. Glastonbury is only one town among other towns. There's nothing wonderful about Glastonbury but the health and freedom and happiness of its men, its women, its children. While this fellow Crow exploits the natural resources of his own profit, and while our bourgeoisie tradesmen exploit all this medieval superstition to their profit, what becomes of the real men and women, able-bodied Somersetshire men and comely Somersetshire women? They can't afford meat or butter. They can't afford fresh eggs. Their children are underfed. Look at them, comrades. Look at the children in Beckery and Bovetown. Look at the children in Benagnis Alley and Paradise. There you have the whole issue. On the one hand, Crow and Wallop exploiting these people's bodies. On the other, these pious mountebanks exploiting their souls. And all these fine bourgeoisie gentry, Lawyer Beer, Dr. Fell, Parks and Decker, and so on. And old Wallop, the worst of all. What are they doing? They are burning toy candles to the Holy Grail. Yes, they are burning incense, while women and children haven't enough to eat. I tell you, comrades, Gerd is our man. I've talked to him already. I didn't even go into that. Though the comrade from Wells did use insulting language, I scorn to answer him. I have already a certain influence upon Gerd, through his favorite daughter. I've already made Gerd see the light upon many economic points. I've already made Gerd open his mind to many bourgeoisie tricks. Gerd has had this working-class mentality opened up to him. It isn't the comrade from Wells, not I, who has departed from the party's principles into his abuse of me and Gerd. It is the comrade from Wells who has. The time has come for real action. The election of the mayor comes on in a few weeks. We can't elect one of ourselves, Mayor. The comrade from Wells knows that perfectly well. But we could elect Gerd, and then work the council through Gerd. My plan is not a wild goose plan. It is a carefully thought-out scheme based upon psychology. This is the reason, no doubt, why the comrade from Wells found it so hard to understand. Mr. Evans heard uproarious laughter and applause as the speaker ceased. It was evident that the final hit at the opposition was very popular with the comrades. He himself sneezed violently at this point, and the sound must have ascended to the room above, raising the disturbing question as to their conclave having been overheard. After a profound silence, he heard the sound of steps descending the stairs, and then there were whispers outside his door. In order to make clear to the whisperers that he knew what they were up to, Mr. Evans began clattering with his fire irons among the coal ashes of his grate. No sooner had he done this than the steps receded up the stairs again. All subsequent decisions in the room above were henceforth quite inaudible, and it was not long before quarterly meeting broke up. When Mr. Evans was at length in bed, with a little table and one of his 2 candles convenient in his hand, he proceeded, while he smoked his final cigarette, to take stock of what he had overheard. "I shall tell Cordelia all they were plotting," he said to himself, "but I don't see why they shouldn't elect my relative mayor. I think he would make a very good mayor." And before the Welshman's mind, as he squeezed out the fiery embers of his cigarette on a broken china saucer that he had brought up from the shop below, there floated an exciting dream of communistic Glastonbury, presided over by his relative Gerd. A Glastonbury in which he himself would play a sort of court magician part, and with Cordelia, the free spirit of the Cymric race, inaugurating the laws and regulations. And he finally turned over to the wall and shut his eyes. He felt happier, thinking of this, than he had felt for many a long week. If these working men decide upon this, he thought, I suppose it'll really happen. I wonder whether it's the town council or the church or the government that gives a person leave to excavate. He saw himself possessed of John Crow's hazel stick with its queer root handle. He remembered how John had assured him that this was such a stick a person would find buried in the earth. Hic jacet Arturus, hic jacet Arturus, hic jacet, hic. And now the next chapter. Carbonek. 2 or 3 days after the quarterly meeting above old Jones's shop, the Bovetown robber band, that is to say Captain Jackie and his infantile followers, were deploying, and such a word may be used at the moment of so diminutive a troop, in loose marching orders to the narrow Godney Road. They had left all the decent houses far behind when they debouched from the Wells Road. They had long ago passed the drive gates of the elms where Philip Crow lived. They were now on the edge of what was called Common Moor, and were not far from Backware Farm, which is the site of the British Lake Village. The road they followed did not carry much traffic along its hard, tarred surface, but the weather was so warm that the robber band was exhausted. The air would have been dusty if the road had not been so polished and so hard, but whether the brown earth showed between the clumps of rough grass by the roadside, it was dry and sapless and unsympathetic and depressing. The day was one of those early spring days that, for some mysterious reason very hard to analyze, are felt to be ill-omened and unpleasant. Something was certainly wrong with all this day. All animal nerves fell ill. All human nerves felt it. All animal nerves felt it. All living things were irritable, restless, disturbed, sick without being sick, sad without being sad, annoyed without any apparent cause for annoyance. Sis was already carrying Bert on her back. Plow chunk, went her sturdy legs under the weight of the complacent and impervious infant. Nellie and Jackie were a little in advance, but even they were walking in single file, silent and grim. Nothing but indomitable will of Captain Jackie could have kept this exhausted cortege on the move, or brought it so far afield of the nervous, touchy, irritable March afternoon. At last they came to a standstill by a low, ancient broken iron railing, which separated an object from the Godney Road. This object could hardly be called a house. It was a tiny little stucco building of 2 stories, each with 2 windows, one looking towards the road and one looking away from the road. The stucco was of a whitish-yellow color and was peeling off. It was stained here and there, too, with stains of a rusty brown. Only an expert in the decline of material substance under the weather evasions could have interpreted these stains. They were not lichen. They were not moss. They looked more like rusty blood. But they could not have really been blood, for no one would have thrown blood against the wall of a house 8 or 9 feet from the ground. Weather stains they obviously were, of chemical origin, but this did not lessen the strangeness of the fact that these rusty stains upon the stucco house had seen fit to assume the surprising shape of a map of North and South America. On the left-hand side of the tiny house was an open shed, one portion of which served as the rousing place for half a dozen white fowls who were now wandering in the adjoining fields. At the back of the house was one of those large dikes of rimes, on the edge of which grew 3 pollarded willows, and between this little stream and the back door of the one single ground floor room there was a small vegetable garden, the leafy promise of which was a good deal further advanced above the loamy clay than either of the grand bourgeoisie gardens tended to by Mr. weatherwax. Okay, that's our Glastonbury romance for today. Till next time, I'll see you in Glastonbury. Cheers.